Ever feel like you're stuck in a maze? Just searching and searching for answers, but every path leads to a dead end.
Ugh, it's the worst feeling.
That's exactly how Lynn Krager felt as she fought for justice for her son, Kyle Berdus.
Yeah, that's a case that really sticks with you.
It's not just another true crime story, though. This is a deep dive into a mother's relentless pursuit of the truth. And it's a journey filled with so many twists and turns, it really exposes how broken the system can be.
What gets me is, this mother had to learn about crucial details of her son's murder investigation, get this, through a podcast.
Can you imagine? I mean, we're going to really dissect this whole story, but it's just wild. So let's rewind all the way back to 2013 in Lee County, Florida. Kyle Berdus, he's a young man battling addiction, is found murdered.
Murdered.
Yeah. Out in a field, like a secluded field. The scene was grim. Multiple gunshot wounds, body just left there.
So many layers to unpack right there. I mean, you've got the addiction, the location, Pine Manor, like you said, not exactly known for being, well, safe. All of that makes it even harder to investigate, right?
Absolutely. And for Lynn and her husband, Gary, I mean, they were on vacation, hundreds of miles away when they got the call.
Oh my gosh, that poor family. I can't even fathom getting that news, let alone being that far away.
I know, right? It's just devastating. Their son, just 25 years old, gone.
And they knew he was struggling, but still.
Yeah.
It's your child.
Of course. So naturally, they wanted answers.
Mm.
What did Lynn even know about Kyle's life at that point?
Right, what does she know?
She knew he was fighting a tough battle, oxycodone and heroin. In fact, the last time they talked, he was calling her from jail.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he'd been arrested for petty theft, probably to feed his addiction.
So he was already caught in that downward spiral. It's just, heartbreaking.
It is. But even with all that, Lynn, she just had this feeling, this mother's intuition, that this was more than just an overdose.
And she was right.
Yeah. The investigation officially ruled it a homicide.
So then what? What did Lynn do?
She didn't waste any time. She wasn't going to let Kyle's case just go cold. She started working with Crime Stoppers right away.
Crime Stoppers, right? That organization that helps get anonymous tips about crimes.
Exactly. And she even increased the reward money, hoping someone would come forward. You know, she even put up billboards with Kyle's picture, all the details, like a desperate plea for answers.
It's incredible what a parent will do for their child. But years went by, right?
Years of silence. But then, in 2021, a bombshell. Lynn gets a call from the Lee County Sheriff's Department, from their evidence room.
What? Why?
They found one of her guns, a gun that had been stolen years ago.
Hold on, so they found a gun connected to Lynn, the victim's mother, in their evidence room. That's just weird.
It gets weirder. It had been sitting there since 2015, apparently never tested.
6 years. Seriously, I can only imagine how Lynn must felt. Like, did they even try?
Right. Thankfully, it wasn't the murder weapon. But still, the fact that they overlooked something that could have been crucial for so long, I mean, it just made things worse.
I bet. Talk about adding insult to injury. But I have a feeling this isn't the last of the surprises.
Oh, you're right. The biggest shock was yet to come. And it came from the most unexpected place. A podcast.
A podcast, seriously.
Okay, so 2022 rolls around,
Right.
and the Lee County Sheriff's Office, they decided to launch this podcast. They called it Seeking Closure, Lee County's Cold Cases.
Oh, yeah, I think I remember hearing about that.
The idea was to, shed some light on unsolved cases, maybe get some new leads.
Sounds good, right?
Yeah, for sure. Podcasts can be really powerful for law enforcement. Reach a much wider audience. Maybe someone out there has that one missing piece.
You'd think so, right? But in this case, it backfired. Big time.
Oh, no. What happened?
One of the episodes focused on Kyle's case. And that's how Lynn learned about all these new details.
Wait, so she had to find out about key developments in her own son's murder case by listening to a podcast?
It's insane, right? Like, imagine hearing about the people your son was involved with, the dangers he faced, all of that for the first time on a podcast. It's awful. I mean, I get that these podcasts can raise awareness, but come on. They have to be so careful about how they handle information, especially in cases like this.
Right. Think about the families involved.
Exactly.
So anyway, the podcast goes into detail about this drug house in Pine Manor where Kyle was staying. It paints this really disturbing picture of him being caught in this dangerous world, surrounded by people deep in the drug trade.
And Pine Manor itself, that just adds another layer to the whole thing. It's not exactly a safe place.
No, not at all. And then they start talking about these key players, like Jesus Choo Choo Torres. He was the leader of the drug house, and his girlfriend, Tatiana. Both of them were under the thumb of this supplier, Luis Baby Santiago. And he had a brother, Carlos, they called him Pablo Santiago, who was also part of it.
Okay, so we're starting to see the web, so to speak, this network of individuals all connected to the drug trade.
Exactly. And then it comes out that Kyle and Choo Choo, they robbed Baby's house, stole like $3,000 and a bunch of heroin.
Bold move.
I know, right? And get this, they used some of the stolen money, like marked bills, to pay off a debt.
Oh no, rookie mistake.
Total rookie mistake.
Yeah.
Led Baby right back to them.
Yeah.
And then things escalated even more. They got wrongly accused of another robbery, this one, for $20,000.
Oh, wow. So now they're really in trouble.
They were terrified. They went on the run, but eventually ended up back at the drug house. Out of options, I guess.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Right. And then, during a phone call, Tatiana accidentally reveals their location to Baby.
Oh, no.
Choo Choo, he hears about this and freaks out. Takes off, leaves Kyle and Tatiana to deal with the fallout.
That's messed up.
Totally.
Yeah.
So Tatiana tries to run, but she gets arrested at the airport. And then the next day, Kyle is found murdered.
It's like dominoes.
Yeah.
One bad thing after another.
I know. And for Lynn, having to hear all of this on a podcast, it was like a punch in the gut. Not just the information itself, but the way she found out. It was just so impersonal.
Yeah. I can't even imagine. Like, you're already grieving, and then you get hit with this bombshell in such a public, insensitive way.
The sheriff's office did apologize. They said they didn't realize Lynn hadn't been told any of this, but the damage was already done.
Right. An apology doesn't erase years of silence. It's just, ugh. It makes you wonder if they even considered the human cost of putting this stuff out there like that.
Yeah, I mean, the podcast did bring Kyle's case back into the public eye, which is what Lynn had always wanted.
It's true. Visibility is huge for cold cases. It can make a big difference.
But the way they did it, it was just wrong. And it left Lynn with even more questions than answers.
I bet.
Like, the podcast threw out some theories about Kyle's murder. One was that it was connected to that $20,000 robbery. Like, maybe whoever they ripped off decided to get revenge.
Makes sense. Revenge is a powerful motivator, especially in that world.
Right. There was also the theory that maybe Kyle got killed during one of his smaller thefts, you know, like a desperate act gone wrong.
Yeah, considering his situation, that wouldn't be surprising.
And then there's Choo Choo. He disappeared after getting a death threat and is still on the run. Tatiana, she might know something, but who knows if she'll cooperate.
So many loose ends. Did they ever find Choo Choo? What about Tatiana? Did she tell them anything?
Those are the questions that keep Lynn up at night. And that apology from the sheriff's office, it just doesn't cut it.
I can understand why. An apology can't take back years of frustration and unanswered questions, especially when it feels like they weren't even trying.
Exactly. But, you know, despite all the mess, the podcast did do one good thing. It put Kyle's case back in the spotlight.
And for Lynn, that's got to count for something. Maybe a new lead will come from it.
Right. It gave her a little bit of hope, even if it was mixed with all the anger and frustration.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest times, a little bit of hope can make all the difference.
Absolutely. But it's also a reminder of just how long this road can be for families like Lynn's. The fight for justice, it's exhausting.
It is. It takes so much strength and resilience, and it's a fight they shouldn't have to face alone.
So we've really gone deep into Lynn's story here. I mean, talk about a mother having to navigate. What a maze of grief and frustration just to get answers about her own son's murder.
Yeah, and it really shows you the cracks in the system. You know, the one that's supposed to be there to protect and serve. Like, there needs to be more compassion, more accountability when it comes to working with families who are going through this.
For sure. In her case, it raises some big questions, like how can law enforcement find that balance between transparency and compassion? And what about using platforms like podcasts to share sensitive information? I mean, is it ethical?
It's a tough one. And then you've got the bigger picture. What can we do to make sure these cold cases get the attention they deserve? How do we improve communication, make sure investigations are thorough, and ultimately bring families like Lynn some sense of closure?
It's a lot to think about. But one thing that's really struck me throughout all of this is Lynn's dedication, her strength. She just never gave up on Kyle.
It's incredible, really. It's like a testament to the power of a mother's love. Nothing, not even time, can diminish that.
But it's also important to acknowledge the toll it's taken on her. I mean, she said herself that the fight for justice has kind of put her grieving process on hold.
That's understandable, though. It's hard to move on when you feel like there are still so many unanswered questions. Like, you need to find the person responsible.
Exactly. And so, where do things stand with Kyle's case? Well, almost a decade later, it's still unsolved. But that podcast, even though it caused so much pain it did bring new attention to the case.
And who knows, maybe that'll lead to something. A new witness, a piece of evidence they overlooked before.
Fingers crossed. And Lynn, she's not stopping. Still working with Crime Stoppers, exploring every angle, she won't rest until Kyle's killer is brought to justice.
It's inspiring, you know. And it's a reminder that we all have a role to play here. We need to support families like Lynn's, help them make their voices heard.
100%. So if you're listening to this and you know anything at all about Kyle's case, please reach out to the Lee County Sheriff's Office or Southwest Florida Crime Stoppers. You can find all their contact info in our show notes.
Even if you think it's not important, say something. You never know, it could be the missing piece of the puzzle.
Could be the thing that brings Lynn and her family some peace. And even if you don't have any information about this specific case, remember the power of just talking about it, sharing Kyle's story, keeping the conversation going.
Because that's how we keep these cases alive. That's how we make sure they don't get forgotten.
Exactly. So thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Kyle's case and for taking the time to learn about Lynn's fight for justice. We hope you'll keep exploring these stories with us. Keep asking questions. Keep using your voice to make a difference.
Because every voice matters. Every story deserves to be heard.